Hello everyone, my name is Frederic Chopin.
Hello, I am Franz Liszt. Today we have a very special guest. What a surprise, Edvard Grieg is here.
Hello, I'm Grieg. Thank you for inviting me today.
Today we're going to hear a lot about Mr. Grieg's life and music. So first of all, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Edvard Grieg, born on June 15, 1843 in Bergen, Norway. As a composer, I'm mainly known for my works incorporating Norwegian folk music.
Yes, Mr. Grieg's music is very attractive because it gives a sense of Norwegian nature and culture.
Now, tell us about your upbringing, Mr. Grieg. What kind of environment did you grow up in?
I grew up in a family that loved music. My mother was a pianist, and she taught me the basics of piano. My father was a merchant and recognized my musical talent early on.
I see. So your family environment had a great influence on your music. How did you receive your formal musical education?
In 1858, at the age of 15, I entered the Leipzig Conservatory. There I was exposed to the music of Robert Schumann and Felix Mendelssohn, which greatly influenced me.
It is interesting to know how your experience at the Leipzig Conservatory influenced your compositional activities.
Now, please tell us about some of Mr. Grieg's major works. Let's talk about Gynt Suite first.
Gynt Suite was composed as music for the play Gynt by Henrik Ibsen. Particularly famous pieces are Morning Mood and At the Palace of the Mountain Demon King.
You were commissioned by Ibsen to compose these pieces, weren't you? How did you receive the request?
Yes, I did. Ibsen is a leading Norwegian playwright, and when one of his plays was to be performed, music was needed for the play. He commissioned me because of my talent for music and my understanding of traditional Norwegian music. Gynt Suite was composed as music for the play Gynt by Henrik Ibsen. Ibsen was a leading Norwegian playwright, and his plays reflect Norwegian culture and traditions. When Ibsen asked me to compose music for the play, I wanted to create a piece that incorporated Norwegian folk music.
What was it like for you to collaborate with Ibsen?
Collaborating with Ibsen was very exciting, and a great opportunity to think about how music could be useful in his plays. It was a fun challenge to compose music while trying to figure out how to combine music with his stories and characters.
The Gynt Suite, Morning Mood, and At the Palace of the Mountain Witch King are especially popular. Could you tell us more about each piece?
Morning Mood depicts the scene in the play where a new day begins. The beautiful harmony of piano and orchestra expresses the fresh atmosphere of the morning.
That song really is the perfect music for waking up. And how about At the Palace of the Demon King of the Mountain?
At the Palace of the Mad King of the Mountains depicts the scene where Gynt is captured in the castle of the Mad King of the Mountains. This piece is designed to draw the listener in by increasing the tension between the rhythm and melody. The crescendo at the end of the piece, in particular, is intended to have a dramatic effect.
The tension in that piece is amazing. It makes you feel as if you are on an adventure with Gynt.
Now, can you talk a little about the other movements?
Of course. For example, Anitra's dance describes the scene where Gynt meets Anitra, an Arabian princess. This piece features exotic rhythms and melodies. Also, Solveig's song is a beautiful aria depicting the scene where Gynt's lover Solveig waits for him.
Solveig's song is especially moving. It conveys Solveig's deep love and patience.
Next, please tell us about Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. This piece is also very famous, isn't it?
Yes, this piece was composed in 1868 at a summer resort in Denmark. The first performance took place in Copenhagen in 1869 and was very well received. The beginning of the first movement of this piece is especially famous, starting with a powerful piano solo.
I love that part too. What is the structure of the piece as a whole?
The piano concerto in A minor consists of 3 movements. The first movement is Allegro molto moderato, the second movement is Adagio, and the third movement is Allegro moderato, e marcato. Each movement expresses a different emotion and mood.
Next, let's talk about your musical characteristics, Mr. Grieg. What are some of the characteristics of your piece?
My works contain many elements of Norwegian folk music. Also, I often use lyrical and scenic melodies to express the beauty of nature and emotions. Furthermore, I compose my pieces with an emphasis on the balance between piano and orchestra, so that both play an important role.
I see. Norwegian nature and culture have a great influence on your music. Next, let's talk in detail about Mr. Grieg's other major works.
First, please tell us about Mr. Grieg's lyric pieces. This collection is very famous.
Yes, Lyric Pieces is a collection of piano pieces in 10 volumes, each volume containing several short pieces. These pieces depict Norwegian nature, daily life, and folk music.
What kind of pieces are included?
For example, there is a song called Arietta in the first volume. It features a simple and beautiful melody. Also, in volume 5, there is a piece called Dance of the Fairies, which is light and has a fantastic atmosphere.
Do you have a particular favorite piece from the lyric pieces?
I have feelings for all of them, but The Wedding Day in Troldhaugen is a particular favorite. I composed this song with the image of a wedding in Troldhaugen, my residence. It is filled with joy and blessings.
Next, let's talk about From the Time of Holbea. How did this piece come about?
From the Time of Holbea was composed to commemorate the bicentennial of the birth of the Danish playwright Ludwig Holbea. The suite imitates the Baroque style and is available in piano and string orchestra versions.
B. What was your reason for adopting the Baroque style?
The 18th century, when Holbea was active, was the Baroque era, and I wanted to recreate the atmosphere of Holbea's time by arranging the music of that era in a modern style. For example, the suite Prelude and Gavotte incorporate the rhythms and forms of Baroque music.
A. What kind of atmosphere does this piece have?
From the time of Holbeer has a classical yet accessible feel. The reinterpretation of the Baroque style from a modern perspective gives it a new feel.
Next, let's talk about Mr. Grieg's chamber music works. For example, what are the characteristics of Violin Sonata No. 3 in C minor?
Violin Sonata No. 3 in C minor is the most famous of my 3 violin sonatas. This piece is characterized by its dramatic and passionate melody. The dialogue between the violin and piano is beautiful, and the emotional ups and downs are richly expressed.
What was your inspiration in composing this sonata?
This sonata was inspired by Norwegian nature and my own emotions. I felt that the key of C minor was particularly suitable for expressing deep emotion and drama.
Next, please tell us about Cello Sonata in A minor. This piece is also very beautiful.
Yes, Cello Sonata in A minor is a powerful and romantic piece. The dialogue between piano and cello is very important, and both instruments are equally active. Particular emphasis is placed on expressing deep emotions in the introduction of the first movement.
What did you pay attention to when writing the cello sonata?
I was careful to make the most of the cello's rich tone and expressive power. Also, in order to maintain a balance with the piano, I wrote the parts in such a way that they cooperate with each other.
Let's talk about the influence of Mr. Grieg's music and how it is regarded today.
Mr. Grieg's music has influenced many composers. Which composers specifically did you influence?
My music has influenced many composers, including John Sibelius, Maurice Ravel, Carl Nielsen, Bela Bartok, and Leos Janáček. They have taken inspiration from my work and composed pieces that incorporate the folk music of their own countries.
What specific influences did you have?
For example, Sibelius composed symphonic poems and symphonies incorporating Finnish folk music. Ravel influenced my lyrical piano music and delicate orchestration. Bartok was also influenced by my collection and study of folk music from Eastern Europe, and composed many works based on it.
You can see how much of an inspiration Mr. Grieg's music was for other composers.
Norwegian nature and culture have greatly influenced Mr. Grieg's music. What specific elements are reflected in your music?
My music reflects the beautiful natural landscape of Norway. Mountains, fjords, and forests are expressed in scenic melodies and rhythms. Norwegian folk music, dances, and traditional festivals were also a great inspiration.
You can clearly see how much Norwegian nature and culture had a great influence on Mr. Grieg's music.
Then how is Mr. Grieg's music appreciated today?
Even today, my music is very highly regarded. My works are widely recognized as part of the standard repertoire of classical music and are performed in many concert halls. They also play an important role in music education.
What specific activities are being undertaken?
For example, the Grieg Festival is held every year in Bergen, Norway, where musicians from all over the world gather to perform my works. Also, there are regular concerts at my former residence Trollhaugen in Bergen.
That is wonderful. It is clear that Mr. Grieg's music is widely loved even today.
Now, here is a letter from a listener.
I'm looking forward to it. What do you think it will be about?
The first letter is from Mr. Faria. Your music has a very Norwegian nature and culture feel to it. Can you tell us about a natural landscape or culture that has particularly influenced you?
Thank you for your letter, Faria. I was particularly influenced by the beauty of Norwegian fjords, mountains, and forests. Norwegian folk music, dance, and traditional festivals were also a great inspiration. These elements, expressed in music, give my work its unique color and emotion.
Nature and culture are deeply connected to your music, Mr. Grieg.
I also come from Mr. Beethoven. Grieg's music often evokes the nature of Norway. I especially love Morning Mood from the Gynt Suite. How did nature inspire you when you were composing?
Thank you, Mr. Beethoven. Norwegian nature has a great influence on my music. In particular, Morning Mood was inspired by my desire to express the beautiful morning scenery of Norway in my music. I put into the music the tranquility and beauty felt in the mountains, fjords, and forests.
You can clearly see how much the experience of being in nature has influenced Mr. Grieg's music.
The next letter is from Mr. Brahms. Miss Grieg, your piano concerto in A minor is wonderful. The beginning of the first movement is especially impressive. What challenges did you face in composing this concerto?
Thank you for your letter, Brahms. There were many challenges in composing this concerto, especially the beginning of the first movement was composed in such a way that it makes a strong impression on the listener. It was difficult to find a balance between the piano and the orchestra, but in the end, we were able to create a strong performance.
It seems that Mr. Brahms also appreciates Miss Grieg's music. Next, we have Mr. Debussy. Mr. Grieg's From the Time of Holbein is truly wonderful. Could you tell us a little more about the significance of bringing the Baroque style into the modern age?
Thank you for your letter, Mr. Debussy. Incorporating the Baroque style into the modern age allows us to enjoy music from a new perspective, blending classical elements with modern sensibilities. I believe this will give the audience a fresh surprise and give them a sense of the history and evolution of music.
The fusion of classical and modern is one of the attractions of Mr. Grieg's music.
The next letter is from Mr. Tchaikovsky. Mr. Grieg, your cello sonata in A minor is truly moving. What were you particularly conscious of when composing it?
Thank you for your letter, Mr. Tchaikovsky. In this sonata, I was conscious of making the most of the cello's deep tone and emotional expressiveness. I also composed the piece to emphasize narrative and drama through dialogue with the piano.
It seems that Mr. Tchaikovsky is also impressed by Miss Grieg's music. The next letter is from Mr. Rachmaninoff. Grieg, your music is very moving. I especially like piano concerto in A minor. What challenges did you face in composing this piece?
Thank you for your letter, Mr. Rachmaninoff. There were many challenges in composing this concerto. Especially, the beginning of the first movement was composed to give a strong impression to the listeners. It was difficult to find a balance between the piano and the orchestra, but in the end, I was able to create a strong performance.
It seems that Mr. Rachmaninoff is also impressed by Mr. Grieg's music. From Mr. Haydn, I have heard that you can feel the nature and culture of Norway in Mr. Grieg's music. Could you tell us about a natural landscape or culture that has particularly influenced you?
Thank you for your letter, Mr. Haydn. I was particularly influenced by the beauty of Norwegian fjords, mountains, and forests. Norwegian folk music, dance, and traditional festivals were also a great inspiration. These elements, expressed in music, give my work its unique color and emotion.
Nature and culture are deeply connected to your music, Mr. Grieg.
The next letter is from Mr. Schubert. Mr. Grieg, your Anitra's dance is wonderful. What are your innovations in the rhythm and melody of this piece?
Thank you for your letter, Mr. Schubert. In Anitra's dance, I used a unique rhythm and melody to express exoticism. The rhythm was created with Arabic dancers in mind, and I incorporated exotic elements in the melody. By doing so, I tried to make the listener feel as if he or she were in an exotic land.
It seems that Mr. Schubert is also impressed by Mr. Grieg's music.
We have Mr. Edvard Grieg as our guest today to talk about the influence of his music and his reputation in our time. Mr. Grieg, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much too. We had a very enjoyable time.
Listeners, look forward to the next installment. See you again.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.